Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 291. Thanks so much for joining me. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, and we're so glad to have you here with us. Dion O'Reilly is our guest tonight. She's coming back after appearing first on an earlier episode, talking about her new book, Limerence, which is a fascinating topic. Before we get, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry and know you do, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring that bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. We're going to start out, though, as we always do, with our Poets Respond poet. And Chera Hammons couldn't be here today, but we're going to share her poem anyway. Her poem, which is the Sunday poem on Rattle.com, was Outage, about the recent power outage, both in Texas that she experienced and the bigger one in Spain and Portugal this week. And here's what Chera had to say about that. You can find Chera, of course, on a past Rattlecast, too. Just type her in. It was about 100 episodes ago-ish, maybe less, about, I guess, 220 or so. I should have looked that up beforehand. But find Chera in a past episode, too. And here was her poem that we featured today on Rattle.com. She says this about it. On Monday, when the power went out in Spain and Portugal, my partner and I inexplicably lost power at our house in Texas, too. The weather was lovely, warm, and calm, no storms, no fires, and we still don't know what happened, but I found out later that many people across the world were, like us, sitting in darkness. So it's a common experience shared here and goes somewhere interesting. This is Chera Hammons once again. She's reading her poem, Outage. Here we go.
Outage. Suddenly we live in a house that doesn't hum, on a barren street of dark houses, blank and towering, abandoned bulwarks backlit by the glow of a city miles away across dark fields. The walls become thin against the night, the air within and without the same temperature. Drywall divides us from the children of wolves. When a light goes out, what becomes of the light? Does it disappear the way we do? The well gives no water if the pump can't run. The electric fences can't hold the horses in. When my father, who lives half an hour away, hears that our power has gone out, he tells me again the story of two peregrines which had been courting in the wind over his roof, how they landed together on a telephone pole, sparked an arc and thunder, and fell to the ground side by side, dead. The house had no electricity for hours after that. What could bear to keep going after that? Our neighbors are slowly vanishing. An old vessel finally tumbles from its place in the stars. Tonight we cancel our plans. We peel oranges by lantern light. We shine flashlight beams on the ground before we step there. We remember the taper candles and matches that wait in the kitchen drawer that we almost never open. Listen, the dog barks and barks, inconsolable. Something unfathomable is happening outside. What I want is what happened to the peregrines. Not the singed feathers, the earth-tilting stillness, but a love that takes the lights out with it when it goes. The kind of loss that will be recounted over and over again in the dark.
And it's a beautiful poem. That was Chera Hammons once again with Outage. I just love that ending and that metaphor of the peregrines at the end. That was Outage, your poem of the day from Rattle.com today. Of course, if you'd like to share any poems about current events, anything that happens, can be news poems about politics, can be obscure stories, can be local things that happened, anything in the news that's happened right now. It's our way of encouraging poetry and encouraging poetry to be part of the conversation, which is really important too. We're all part of a conversation here as human beings, and poetry should be there in time with the rest of it. So submit your poems by Friday night at midnight. If you'd like to share your poems written in reaction to current events, that's Rattle.com. Go over to content, and you can find Poets Respond in the drop-down menu there and get your poems in. Hope you send some in soon. Now, like I said, today's guest is Dion O'Reilly. We're going to take a quick break and go to her, so sit tight, and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, today's guest is Dion O'Reilly. Dion first appeared in episode 137. Her new book, Limerence, is just out from Floating Bridge Press. She's the author of 2 previous poetry collections, Sadness of the Apex Predator, a finalist for the Steel Toe Book Prize, and the Ex Ophidia Prize. Ghost Dogs, winner of the Pinnacle Book Achievement Award, the Independent Press Award for Poetry, and shortlisted for the Eric Hoffer Poetry Award and the Catamaran Poetry Prize. She's a podcaster at the Hive Poetry Collective, leads poetry workshops, and is a reader for Catamaran Literary Reader. She splits her time between a ranch in Santa Cruz Mountains and a residence in Bellingham, Washington, where she is now. And here she is, Dion O'Reilly. Hey, Dion, so great to see you again.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's definitely my pleasure. And, we're getting to that point. We talked about this over email where, like, repeating guests is an issue because we can't repeat everybody. So I have to find people that have interesting angles and stuff to come back for something new. And your book, Limerence, I loved because it's a word that I'd never heard of before that was actually fascinating. So I'm really excited to talk about that. But how are you doing so far?
I'm doing pretty well. It's just so beautiful in Bellingham.
Yeah.
Beautiful weather, kind of cloudy, then some sun. It's just really lovely. So,
well, do you want to start out with a poem from the new book?
Okay, Limerence. Let's see. We decided. Okay, well, first off, let me just say that what limerence is, so people know. Limerence is an obsession with an unavailable love object, and I had that problem for a very long time. And when I discovered what limerence was, I just took all my poems that were about that and I put them in one document, and I put them in the order that the limerence happens in people. So limerence has 3 stages: infatuation, crystallization, and deterioration. And it can happen very rapidly. You go through all those stages, or it can go on for 50 years. Obsession with an unavailable love object. So I just organized the book according to those 3 phases. So the book goes through that arc. So the first poem I'm going to read is from the infatuation phase. And well, actually, it's from that first section, but it's a poem that kind of sets the stage, because limerence usually happens to people who have some sort of trauma from their childhood. And anyone who's read my other books knows that there's a bit of that. Okay, so this is called Learning to be Left. Learning to be left. Most days after school, I waited. Gulped the last of my thermos milk, let it purl on my lips, climbed a cyclone fence to Petapitbix, tramped through Spartina in the small swamp next to the train tunnel, crouched, hoping no one would see me in a damp spot to pee. My mother was a punctual woman, swung at me with a broom when my lingering made her late. Why did she delay? The 5 o'clock Carillon bells would chime and go silent. The sky ached. Dusk. No sound of the Lincoln V8. No hairspray smell, shiny white shopping bags side by side in the trunk, no sister with some boy necking in the back seat. Just my thoughts lifting like bees, rocks piled up to pitch at a train, pigeons who ventured closer and closer for crumbs.
Yeah, that's one of the early poems from Limerence, Learning to be Left. And that Limerence, Dion, it's such an interesting word. First of all, I always love looking up etymologies and seeing where it's come from. And limerence is it's maybe the newest word I've ever looked up. I think it only comes from the 70s, coined by a psychologist. And it's relatively obscure even in psychological circles, or at least it's so called on Google. So how did you come across that word, and how did you know to name your collection after that?
Well, I think I think I was listening to a lot of YouTube videos on narcissism
Hmm.
and trying to understand my mother, who actually is not a narcissist. It turns out she's a psychopath.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that because I was looking at those videos, I got sent these Limerence videos. And I think there is one called the Limerence Fairy. And she talks almost exclusively about limerence. And so I listened to a couple of those. And then the decision to put all of those limerent poems of mine into a book was just came out lifted from my subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of the still quiet voice sort of thing. You need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat down and did it. I mean, really quickly, and sent it off for really quickly. So yeah, I think that the more you write poetry, the more you learn to kind of listen. Oh, there's a poetry idea, because they
Mm-hmm.
always are not particularly logical thoughts. They're not like, oh, I need to pay bills. They percolate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was wondering, with that word limerence, being so new, why do you think that it took so long for us to have a word for that in English? It's one of those, there's so many, fancy, fun German words for strange things that don't have words in English. And it felt like one of those. Like, how do we not already have a word like limerence? Why did it need to be coined? So why do you think that is?
Well, I think that limerence begins with infatuation, which just feels like falling in love. And I think that, I mean, this is a good question. It's not something I've thought about. So this is just off the top of my head. I think that infatuation is so glamorized.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea of, oh, you're my kindred spirit and you're the one, you're my twin flame. I mean, that's something that is elevated, I think, in the media and in movies and in Gothic romances and that sort of thing. Not realizing that that's not necessarily a healthy sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear the next poem we were going to share. I think next we had, do you want to do First Fear?
Oh, First Fear. I thought it was Past Lives, but First Fear is pretty good. Oh, I wrote down a different thing. First Fear. Do you know what page that's on?
It's the next page. It's on page 7.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right. First Fear. Okay. Cool. All right. First Fear. I'm 5, 20 feet up. My fingers around the blue spruce branches like I'm holding a mother's hand. Except I'm not, and I don't. I'm scared of her, more scared than a monkey slipping from a tree. It's the day I decide I don't love her anymore. I decided in the pasture when my fingers cracked the dried lid of a cow pie as she beat her rhythm into my skin. I plan on telling her that night when she puts me to bed. When she puts me to bed, she likes to ask if I love her, and I'm ready to say no. I practice no like a mantra. Of course, we're born to love our mothers, but have you heard of the first great fear? Falling, and the kind of snake who can eat you in a tree. Can you imagine it? Big enough to unhinge its jaws and, slow as love, take you down her long body.
Yeah. So I love that poem for that last image at the end. That being devoured by love like by a snake's unhinged jaws. That was First Fear from Limerence. And you get into this, so much, which is just always such a fascinating thing to me, is that the way we layer our own experience of the world and the way we react to people is all built upon those early relationships with our parents. Everything is an offshoot of that, and that's the thing that comes out so clearly and interestingly in that book, the way that this this rough romance, comes from the experience with your mother deep down. Did you realize, like, how did you come to that realization that it had anything to do with your mother at all? Because that's something that it seems like it takes a lot of work to get to that understanding.
Well, I mean, I have had a lot of therapy, and that's the kind of thing they usually like to point out to you. So it's always a waste of time in a poem to dwell on this person did this to me or this person did that to me. I mean, what makes it interesting is, and what really makes a poem luminous is making some kind of connection to something else, some sort of discovery. So, I mean, that's just what I was trying to do with the arc of the book. But, it was doing that research on YouTube, the stuff on narcissistic parent, the stuff on limerence that this woman was talking about, and I made the connections. And I just knew at the beginning of the book, I couldn't go right into meeting the person I was limerent with. I need to set up why and how I was vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I did. And I kind of left out Sasquatch Hunter. Did I send you Sasquatch Hunter?
Yeah. Do you want to read that? That was the next one we had up. Yeah, sure.
Okay. I didn't mean to stop your questions, but
No, that was great.
Okay. Yeah. So this is still in the first part of the book, and this is when I meet this person that I become limerent with. He wasn't the Sasquatch Hunter, but a lot of this book takes place in Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, where I lived in my 20s, my very early 20s. And that's the kind of thing that would happen in the 70s in Seattle. You would live in a group house with someone, and it would turn out that they were obsessed with Sasquatch. This guy was limerent with Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Like, he was obsessed. He was in love with Sasquatch. Okay. But that's not the person that I was obsessed with. Sasquatch Hunter. My housemate, John, told me how he'd lay out a plaid blanket in the Olympics, uncork a French vintage, pull bologna and pork skins from a paper sack, then fuck his girlfriend hard as he could to attract, how he loved telling me, his beloved Bigfoot. Such eagerness when he displayed his pictures, caressed them with his blunt thumb, oversized prints framed in clawed wood, ferns and cedars marked with arrows pointing at nothing. There he is, Sasquatch, he'd sigh, the air brightening around his face, joy buzzing in the flies, the tap, tap, tap of the willow on the window pane. And although I saw nothing in his photos, I loved to watch him pulse with all the gods of war and marriage, hell and volcanism, whatever gods there are who make us dream of brighter gods. But he turned violent one day. I had to flee from his machete out the bathroom window. That night, in my distress, I slept with Phoenix, a man who took what form he needed to capture a girl. Years later, he told me, I knew I'd have you, Dion, if I turned into a beast of your imagination. Of course, those weren't his words. What he said was, you set a higher bar. Whatever. He left me face down, a chalk outline on cement. For decades, I visited the spot like a cop who couldn't leave a cold case. I thought maybe there was a morgue somewhere where I could find my young face, scattered with freckles, my bluish skin, blue eyes, bruisey luminescence. And Phoenix will have tagged it with small forensic descriptions of reasons we never touched, never sent our animal stink into an empty land.
Yeah, so that was a Sasquatch Hunter from Dion O'Reilly's new book, Limerence. And so you mentioned, so many great images, and the endings are wonderful in these poems too. And so I'm curious about your writing process, Diane. It's as you come across the idea for a poem like this? You mentioned keeping your ears alert for ideas. And once you have an idea, what is your writing process like bringing it into fruition?
It's funny because you asked me something like that last time, and I told you about my word list.
Mm-hmm.
That when I read, I would underline, and I kept a list of these words that I underlined, or phrases or ideas. And I still read really, really closely, and
Mm-hmm.
I read every day. Um, and I mark up my books. Here's some Rilke, it's all marked up. I don't really transcribe as much a um, into a document anymore. I keep so it keeps changing, but the more I do this, I feel like the more I've got my antennas up.
Mm-hmm.
When I hear a phrase in my mind or an idea, it's like you got to sit down and write.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it's really kind of miraculous the way it comes up and out. I I have been talking to Paul Nelson. He's a local kind of Seattle guy who's obsessed with projective verse and just writing in one draft.
Mm-hmm.
And just from talking to him about that, I've kind of set it as an intention that things come out more whole.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
And there is always that balance. But I feel like the more you kind of listen and the more you absorb these writers that you love, the more that becomes possible.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's all about reading. I do really feel that
Uh-huh.
that's
And your endings, as Darlene's place says here, the endings here are very sudden. You end on a really strong image, a strong metaphor very often, where it's like it develops that effect where you read and then you want to pause a little bit and absorb what's happened. And so how do you write? How do you get to that ending, and how do you know when you found the right spot to end on like that?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to end. You will notice once you see it, you can't look away. You can't not see it. The poems often end in darkness or in light,
Hmm.
or they fly out into space, or they go out over the ocean. There's this flyaway kind of thing that happens frequently at the end of the poem. And so if I see that happening, I might do that. Although I'm careful not to end in light because now that I've seen it so often. Um, I'm careful of that. But once again, there's just kind of this you look for these really strong images in your poem and ones that really speak to you, ones that really have a feeling tone. And you want to highlight them, either put them at the end of a stanza or at the end of your poem. But these are the poem, and this brings us to that whole altered state thing,
Mm-hmm.
is that I'm starting a journal on altered states. I'm very interested in altered states. And these kinds of strong lines, you feel it. They alter how you feel. They're the lyric moment. The
Mm-hmm.
lyric moment is extremely magical. Time stops in the lyric moment. You're kind of paused. And so, yeah, when you find those lines that are strong like that, you just want to feature them.
Mm-hmm.
So you develop your ear for them. And you underline when you read someone and you go, oh, that line, like, Rilke's first sonnet. Rilke's amazing because, he was struck suddenly with this desire to write the elegies and the sonnets, and they all came out in one piece. But he's got this line, oh, tall tree in the ear. Like oh, tall tree in the ear. It's just like,
Hmm.
I don't know, for me, that's very striking. So creatures of stillness crowded from the bright, unbound forest out of their lairs and nests. That I just find that so very moving. These creatures of stillness, you need to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the dark, but you just try to cultivate that ear. You can cultivate it by having a good workshop leader that points out, oh, that's an amazing line. I've had some good teachers
Yeah.
and also
Yeah, I love that Rilke's definition of love as two solitudes that touch, you know? And I always think of those great lines that stand out in poetry as like those moments where the reader and the writer, their two solitudes touch and become intertwined. It's like a kind of love that connects the gaps between. And so often they're really simple lines, image based, changing the way you think about something, but in a direct way that's not flowery and trying to explain or articulate, but just letting the truth come out in all of its like purity. And so many lines like the ones you mentioned are that. And so it's really cool to hear highlighting those as you go through books and trying to do you think of like writing toward those or what about like writing past them too? Like when you get to a line like that, how do you know that that's going to be the end of the poem, or if you should keep going and push past and find the next great moment like that in your own poem?
Well, a good final image will encapsulate the idea of the poem, of what you're working toward. Um, Slow as love, take you down her long body. I think that was the line. I mean, we're really talking about being absorbed by a dangerous creature. And I think that slow as love is an interesting way to say it because it's not love, right? It's absorption, but that's the only way you have learned about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that studying these kinds of images and just asking yourself, why is this working? Why does this feel so strong? And there's this idea that Danusha Limerence taught me when I was her student that a poem has a subject A and a subject B. And subject A is just maybe the plot. Here's a kid who climbs up a tree and won't let her mother kiss her or hug her. That's subject A. Subject B is the idea of that. And if that's more difficult to describe, it's a theme, it's an insight on life. What's the insight there? Well, that love can begin even if you push someone away and say, I hate you, I don't love you anymore. Even if you do, that's how you identify love in your mind. So that would be subject B. But subject C is the feeling level of the poem that cannot be described. It's more like the Jungian transpersonal. It's some mystery that you have brought forth that you didn't know about. It's not working cognitively, like two solitudes touching. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't even say, but somehow you feel yourself vibrating with it. So that's subject C. So I think you have to attune your mind to pick up that feeling tone of a poem that makes that poem so good.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, it definitely does. And I'm always so fascinated with the idea of the subconscious and the role that plays within writing. And talking about the subject A and subject B, that the A is the thing you're overtly writing about. And then the other stuff is the stuff that you really need to write about but don't know how to express and articulate. And so you need the symbolic energy of the stuff that you're talking about in order to express that deeper subject B and feeling C level of the poem. And that's really, you can see it pretty starkly in the way your poems move through the page. As Dick Westheimer was mentioning, you can feel yourself working through your own surprise in these poems, which is what makes them and keeps them interesting and engaging, I think.
Well, 12-step programs are really interesting because they talk about understanding your issues intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. And I think that poems want to go, that's subject A, B, and C. I think it's good to be working on all those levels.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the topic of limerence has three phases, like we mentioned. There's the infatuation, crystallization, and then deterioration. The next poem is one from the crystallization phase. Do you want to read that next? That was Past Lives.
Mm-hmm. Past lives. Just one second. Another drink. Past lives. If I say when I met you, I saw atoms that were once part of someone else, whom I loved the way a beaten child loves a small white rat. I do not mean to suggest that you were not possessed of an attractive scent, hint of burnt leaves, tomato sweat, reek of a car crash. What is it about accidents that rushes the blood into the chambers of the heart? The way every neighbor gathers to watch a mansion flame, the urge to witness a jet, aloof and unreachable, plunge like a comet. I rubbernecked my own demise, watched myself walk with rocks in my pocket along your tide line, your eyes flat as that concrete cast of slick sand, an unperturbed sheen that swallowed itself, by which I mean I loved the look of you, vaporous in the way of a mirage that wanted to be water. Did you love me for my thirst? Even now, I cup the air, lift nothing to my lips.
And that was Past Lives from the book Limerence by Dion O'Reilly. What can you ask? Because we only get a glimpse into this book. How can you describe to set the background what this relationship was like, who this person was? What can you tell us about some of the backstory?
Well, it was someone I met in my very early 20s, and it was like a kindred spirit. I mean, it was somebody that I felt extremely connected to and still do in a way, can kind of tune into them. But it just couldn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And because of both of our traumas, I would say, it's kind of tragic. But over the years, I just got to the point where it didn't plague me anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel fairly released from it. But it was a long, hard climb.
Yeah. How long would you say that was that you were sort of entrapped in that emotion of limerence?
Good 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what it's interesting because there's so much talk about love as being unselfish, and the idea that if you love somebody, and it's real love, it doesn't matter if it's requited or not. There's that there's this whole concept that we sort of lionize in our culture that it should be so selfless that you don't need to get anything back, and what like what can you say about that? Like, is there a level where the love itself is enough, or is it never enough when it's negativity that you're getting in return?
I can't say I got negativity in return. It was not a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you bring up a really interesting point there, and that, of course, I'll always feel love for this person, and I'm sure this person feels love for me. I feel love for, people who have hurt me. But that doesn't mean that this is the person that I'm going to spend my life with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that's it. But I think that the feeling of love is the word love it's kind of like what you're saying. There should be more words for love. It's like snow, there's so many different kinds of love.
Yeah, there's so many times we're trapped inside just the limitations of the language we inherit and our like inability to realize that it's even a limitation, and so that there's so many different kinds of love, that there's so many different kinds of poetry even, that do different things and operate on different levels, and we sort of just all think of it as poetry. We all think of it as love, even though there's so many different kinds of love and so many different ways it can function, and we could be labeling all of them differently, and yet we don't. And it's always really interesting to think about. Let's see.
That's why we have poetry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And coming up with new, because you don't understand things until you articulate them, and that's what poems really do. Mm-hmm.
Love is one of the most mysterious of all, and that's why there's so many love poems. I mean, we basically have odes and elegies, and poems are all mainly some form of Are there usually one or the other? And an ode is it's a praise poem. It's kind of like a love poem. I think that when you're a poet, and this goes back to that whole altered state thing, when you're a poet, and when you really delve into the vastness and the incomprehensible nature of what is going on in your mind and what is going on in the world, when you really kind of let go of your ego and what you think you should write about, and you delve into the mystery of what's going on, your ego gets relativized. You realize how small you are, and you can't help when you see the vastness of the mystery, but feel reverence. And I think love is a form of reverence. It's just amazing the way we can feel about people.
Yeah.
It's a strong, beautiful, mysterious force. You can explore it forever. We just have this word love, and it's just so limited. So I think that's one of the really cool things about this process is just the awe that you feel for the mystery of what's going on inside.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Really well said. Let's go back to poems. So the third part is the deterioration phase. Do you want to read Zoom with an ex who treated me like toilet paper next? Or do you want to skip that and go to this morning, a coyote?
I have that. I forgot which ones I told you. Zoom with an ex who treated me like a good title.
It is, yeah.
That's enough. We don't.
Okay.
Let's read This Morning a Coyote.
Okay.
And then maybe we can read that the very last poem too, because it kind of captures the impossibility yet the love at the same time, the very last poem in the book. But okay, so this morning a coyote, this morning a coyote paced across our path, laughing at us, light as a ghost, pink tongue resting on his teeth. My terrier lost her mind, chased him to the rocky bottomlands. I couldn't follow, could only hear her scream, buzzards tilting above me. I covered my ears with my palms, turned away, walked home. An hour later, she returned, limping, riddled with burrs and punctures. Isn't the well-worn trail enough? It loops around the meadow, prick of birdsong, live oaks dripping like metronomes, ancient pines swimming in mist. I look back at my house, its red paint seems joyous. Am I happy? I gave up predators long ago, although one left a tooth in the tender skin of my neck. Oh, stupid dog, I'll never blame you, always seeking distractions in the fabulous stink of pheromones. Will I meet him again in a brick-walled espresso house, an Al-Anon meeting, smoking under a gargoyle outside a wax museum? I want more of his presence, envelopes made of $10 bills, thumb-sized books of mystic poetry, a sketch of a Mobius strip twisted for infinity. But he escapes, down the slot canyon. Stay, Dion, don't follow.
Yeah, it's another beautiful poem that was This Morning a Coyote from Limerence by Dion O'Reilly. If you have any questions for Dion, please leave in the chat windows, either on Facebook or YouTube. I can pass them along. Also, if you haven't yet, please do click the like button. We always have many more people watching live than have clicked like yet. And when I say that, it reminds people that they should click like, and that's really helpful for showing the video to other people later. So make sure you click the like button in addition to liking and subscribing the channel itself. There was a question from... where did it go? Jimmy Pappas want to know. It's similar. It sort of leads on what we were talking about before. He says, if someone loves you back in an extreme way, is that a bit over the top or is it a good thing? Can't that be also an example of limerence?
Yeah, well, I'm no expert on relationships, but it sounds like, it could be that person is limerent with you, you know. I mean, if it feels like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, let's see. And then there's another one. Where did it go? We'll wait for more questions. I can't see it now. Let's see. So we have one more poem from this book, and then I want to talk about altered states a lot too. So let's finish up with the last poem you wanted to share here, which was The Lyric Moment Lasts.
Okay. Yeah, so this is sort of, at the end of the book where I'm just in a more expansive place. I'm not as obsessed. But okay, I'll just read it and then maybe talk about it after. The lyric moment lasts. Oh, and I wrote this when I was in Bellingham, and it was full of smoke from fires in Canada. The lyric moment lasts. Canadian smoke, vape skunk on public paths, a smokeless Rivian driven by a man who didn't want me. All the men and women who didn't want me, and the one who does. Our favorite bed, our overwashed sheets. I let them in. I let in the living. I let in the dead. The expanding ranks of the mad with tin cups and tuneless guitars, the falsely proud with their flags and concealed carry, my assassin mother, plumbers, pilots, project managers, ex-presidents, thieves. I let in the fleshy, I let in the wasted. Yes, I let in the one who loves me, and the velvet night lifts my bed, takes me like a clipper ship, takes fine cut tea. The oaks and eucalyptus bow to me like a queen. They regain their kingdoms, and the sins of the eucalyptus are forgotten. Monarchs gild their branches like magnificent cloth. The beetle-eaten oaks burst into green. The white clay broken in bogs and spray cans in landfills lift like Jehovah's Witnesses. Even my assassin mother, deathless God, dies and gives me rain. The necrophiliacs abandon their passions. The flag bearers and gunslingers are stunned by the lies of revelation. AI ceases its hallucinations. Project managers leave their applications. Totalitarians learn to follow their breath. In a warm sea, fish tremble leaderless. They move toward another world.
Yeah, another beautiful poem. That was The Lyric Moment Lasts by Dion O'Reilly. And so so that was the deterioration phase. And what was the process like of getting over this limerence? You mentioned, it's something that lasted 40 years. How
40.
yeah. So how did you manage to get over it and move past it? Was the poetry,
Well,
I guess, part of the
poetry
process
helps. Yeah,
too? Yeah.
poetry helps. Therapy helps. Psychedelics help.
Uh-huh.
What can I say? I mean, I changed my perspective. I
Mm-hmm.
just, meditation helped.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was doing a lot of meditation when I wrote that last one. It I think embracing paradox
Mm-hmm.
really helped. And poetry is so good for embracing paradox. The paradox was, I love this person, but I can't love this person.
Mm-hmm.
This person loves me, but he can't love me.
Mm-hmm.
And to really take that in and find it beautiful. And that's what this poem, that poem is about. Let in everything. Let in the wasted. Let in the ones who love me. It's not like don't push them away necessarily. It's just let it in and be okay with that paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and as a poet, I love paradox because the universe is not rational. And it's not going to deal you rational stuff. So in some way, you have to accept what is dealt you. Another way to accept what is dealt you is when you turn it into a metaphor or an image, and then you can accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I say my mother is a predatory bird is a beautiful thing. It's going to rip your heart out, but it's not its fault. That's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the taking in of images and metaphors and symbols, and the acceptance of paradox helped me a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about that altered states you mentioned. It's a fascinating topic. You mentioned you're starting a journal on the poetry of altered states, and so tell us first of all where you got the idea to do that to start with, and then what you have in mind for that when you say altered states in poetry. What do you mean by that?
Well, it is kind of the lyric moment. It is when you're, Dorian Locke says that there's an invisible final line after your final line in every poem. And this is something interesting about final lines. And the invisible final line is, and after that, everything changed. Like Rilke's, you must change your life. It's that being changed by reading or writing poetry. That's what we look for, that subject C changes you. So there's a lot about psychedelics in the news right now and psychedelic assisted therapy. And I think people are rediscovering it in a more ritualized and safer way. And people are not writing about it, and I want to hear about it. I'm a boomer. I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. And it really affected me, those the mushrooms that I picked up from the lawns at the University of Washington, out in the cow fields in the Skagit Valley back in the 70s and 80s. It really changed who I was, and they paved the way for more, for the poetic mind. But it's not just that, it's Kundalini, it's breath work, or it's just working on your poetry, or it's falling in love, or it's walking into a grove of a redwood grove, a cathedral of redwoods. There are so many things that change your mind and alter how you feel. And that's what I'm really interested in poetry, is the way it taps into the subconscious and it pulls out the mysterious and the vast, and it, condenses it, like Rilke condensed this vastness in sonnets. And they're so condensed and they're so explosive because they're filled with so much energy, and they really do change you when you read them. So I've started a poetry journal with Addie Mamasani, who also came up with that subject C, and Jeremy Graves. Addie Mamasani is a poet. Jeremy Graves is one of the co-editors. He's got a poetry book. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a brand new book, but he was the co-editor of The Illuminated Mind, which is kind of a seminal book on Tibetan meditation. Three of us, we've got our first issue. We haven't posted it yet, but we will be open probably like in July. It's probably going to post in June. It's called Entrance or Entrance, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It's the same word. Entrance Journal, and it's going to be posted in June or July, and we'll start taking more submissions at that point. So far, we have Dorian Locks in the first issue, Ellen Bass in the first issue, Jan Beatty, Luke Johnson, Jessica Cuello. Just got a bunch of good people, and I'm promised poetry from Gregory Orr and Tim Siebels, and some other ones will probably go in the next issue. So, we've gotten some good people, got some great poems, and it's got podcasts, got a podcast element to it. We talk really very brief podcasts, like a 20-minute, 30-minute. I've got a podcast with Ellen Bass about her poem, and it's just really great. She's so articulate. So that's what we're doing there.
Yeah, that's really fun. So when you talk about altered states, I mean, what's the difference? You can make an argument that every poem that's successful achieves an altered state, and that's what really art really is doing. Is that it's finding a way into that, seeing into the middle, into the interstices where you don't quite understand, and that itself both requires and is the product of an altered sense of consciousness. And we end up. We do it so many different ways, and there's tons of ways to get there. But we do it by the sort of ritual of opening the space that we're writing into and letting ourselves sort of not force the way to get there. And then we ritualize the writing process and look for the surprise and try not to, try to allow for self-discovery to happen. And what you do is really getting into a meditative kind of trance, it seems to me.
Trance. Yeah.
Yeah, and so how is that? I mean, how is there a difference that you see from that to other types of entrancement that you're talking about, or do you, welcome that kind of state too? Because it's a sort of the whole thing is a meditative process. It seems.
Well, I'm not quite sure if I get your question, but I mean, sometimes just sitting down with a book and reading and going, I'm not going to do anything else but read this one poem here. I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm going to tell my husband that I'm busy and, so it's just focus, it's
Hmm.
just being with that poem. And the same way with writing, I'm just going to take this time and all I'm going to do is write. And I think that that is hard enough in this day and age. And even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, I think that's really important. I think there's lots of things that can help you just sitting quietly and relaxing. And I think writing down your dreams is good. I think going for walks is good. Just whatever can kind of get you out of the cogitation
Hmm.
and settle down.
Yeah. Hmm.
And like I do think when you said all good poems or all good art are going to have that altered state thing, I'm like, yeah, I think so. Not everyone will tune into it. Like
Hmm.
not everyone likes modern art. Not everyone likes projective verse, but I think that the poems that kind of go viral, You Must Love the Mutilated World,
Hmm.
Let's Praise the Mutilated World, and poems like that, Small Kindnesses, that those poems people feel a large number of people feel very changed when they read them.
Hmm. Yeah, I always think of it as sort of entering, we get into a hypnotic type trance like state when we're so focused. And it doesn't matter what you're really focused on. It's like, skilled focus gets you into that flow state that we talk about pretty often. And anything you do with skill and with focus can get you into that state. Like for me, playing baseball has a big flow state component to it. But then if you practice writing enough, writing gets you into that flow state component. And it feels to me like what you're doing is losing the construction of yourself, like the sort of fake artifice of your identity, and going deeper into like the collective connection that we have in common with everybody else, and the way that that the divisions that we make between ourselves and others in the greater universe is really an imagination, like it's an artifact of the way we construct reality, and not the actual reality itself, whereas everything is interwoven and we're all like eddies in the current. And so once you get into that state where you've lost your sort of fixation on your own identity, you end up writing in a way that connects with other people because you can speak. That's what the two solitudes touching really is like those two, like loss of that like self-identity focused state into a broader context is what we resonate with. And so I think, and ultimately to me, I think that's why, if you're open, it like takes being open to a certain kind of art. Like there is a subjectivity to it. You need to sort of have the key to the door that's opening. But if you can't open it, you have that like communion with the artist and the whole broader collective, And that's why, to me, I think that entrancement is really a part of all art, I would say. I mean, you talk about paintings, talk about sculpture, talk about anything that you're doing with focused intent. Even athletes who are like we love watching sports because, the athlete gets in the zone, which is the flow where there's like no division between the external world and them, and they're just hitting the threes, doing everything perfectly, and that's fascinating to us. And so there's this way we all connect through that altered state somehow. That's always been really interesting to me.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made, and I think scientists argue about this too, is like what forms consciousness? Is it formed by your brain, or is your brain like a radio receiver that's picking something up?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that working on your craft just makes your receiver better.
Yeah. What can you tell us about the actual like psychedelic type experiences, the altered states of doing things through that sort of external source? Maybe some might call it a shortcut, but there's a lot of research into into the power of it for relieving anxiety, the microdosing, things like that, are really a powerful tool that we're realizing more and more. And, it's not something I have a ton of experience with myself, but what, how, it's one of those things, like sometimes if you write a poem like high one night, it's the same as writing a poem in your dream where you wake up in the morning and it's really not even a poem. It's just junk, and like you think it's amazing while you're in that altered state, but you don't bring it back with you. So what is the relationship there?
Marijuana. I think that's true of marijuana. And well, okay. So, I mean, it is not legal to take these substances. So I demur from talking about it in great depth. But I will say this, like I said before, those who know me know that I had a brutal childhood with a psychopathically criminal mother. And then when I was 19, I was burned in a house fire and I lost 80% of my skin and had like near-death experiences, which were quite transcendent at that time, and also really appreciated the morphine and what it did mentally, because the pain did not go away. I just changed. I was in an altered state and the pain didn't bother me. I laughed at it. So these were very, very important lessons to me at a very young age. And then after that, I did experiment with psilocybin when I lived in Washington, and I was very young, and I had a Jungian therapist that I went to. And I never told her that I was taking these substances, but I would take them the day before, and then I would visit her and talk to her, and she really helped me a lot. I really had a lot of breakthroughs. I wish I'd never stopped going to her. Nowadays, they've done a lot of research, and if people are interested in this, I would really encourage them. I mean, Michael Pollan, I read Michael Pollan's book, and that's part of the reason why I got interested in altered states too. Again, as a old lady, Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. And I like to watch videos of people going on ayahuasca journeys. It really blows my mind. Some of it is very unpleasant, and often psychedelic journeys can be unpleasant, but so can writing about the trauma of your past and really, really resolutely looking at what has happened to you. And some people might not want to dwell on that, but I feel like if you clean the window to the past and you're just looking in a new way, it's helpful. So these altered states can be unpleasant sometimes, but I think you can still get something out of it. But there's been a lot of research on especially MDMA with not Vietnam vets, but just vets.
Yeah.
Iraq and Afghanistan. And the success rate is not like anything they have ever seen before. And they've come up with a protocol. They do it very frequently, like once a month. There's music piped in. There's a blinders put on them, a face mask, a mask over the eyes. They have two people there with them, and people are really changed from it. I mean, the facts are kind of there that it really does change people. It's very good with trauma and very good for people who are nearing death and help them get rid of their fear of death. So I don't think that people who are taking anti-anxieties that do something with their serotonin or depression drugs that mess with your serotonin, I don't think that they can take it. But I mean, I just would encourage people to do research on it, because the research is all really, really good.
Yeah. Well, having some experience with both, do you think they work in the same way? Like, is it I've heard people talk about it. I'm fascinated by lectures and YouTube videos too, like you are. So I get a lot of information just from there. While I'm working, I have a lot of stuff, people talking all the time. And it always has struck me that, the way that, I don't know, it's that what you thought was true, realizing it's not. Like, you were sort of clinging to this like model of what we think is true, like so hard that like it's painful, like it's like a claw grip on something, and you're just like, and then once you realize that that the reality is not what you thought. And you can get there through different meditative type states, like different trance type states, or you can get it through writing. That discovery that we talk about in every poem that we shared today was you letting go of something you thought and realizing it was not what you originally saw it as. And that's like the process of poetry. So do you think that they're working in the same way, or do you think they're unrelated, having sort of, experienced it both firsthand? Do you think they're related or not?
All I know is that they interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That the more you have these experiences, the more you can bring the insight into your poetry. And if you are a poet and you are having those experiences, you can articulate them while you're having them, and you can bring more depth to the experience. Mm-hmm. That's what they interact with each other. I mean, a psychedelic experience, depending on how much you take. I mean, I think people who microdose, it's very different. And that's just like, microdosing is just like having a cup of coffee or something, it makes you feel better in the morning. So that, that just is enhancing your life. That's different. But the big psychedelic experiences, I forgot what the hell I was talking about.
Well, just how much they're related to the healing process of writing. Because we talk so often about how writing is healing. And is it working in a similar way, or is it something different?
Yeah, it really just, it really takes you to a different place. You're right. It makes you feel completely different. And also, it's very pleasurable. Mm-hmm. It's very pleasurable, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's extremely beautiful. You experience how alive the universe is, how it's a sentient thing. You're flooded with feelings of love and reverence. And, I think that things like that in Judeo-Christian culture is, you're supposed to be suffering. And when people say, oh, this is a shortcut to enlightenment, like, what's wrong with that? Like, that's a bad thing? Like, who gets enlightened anyway? Hardly anybody. If there's a shortcut, if there's a way to do it that's easier, like, why is that why? Because we're all supposed to work hard and suffer to get anything, right? So, I think that, there's that old follow your bliss thing. Mm-hmm. I really think there's something to that.
Yeah. Well, let's hear. You sent us a Hiben as an example of an altered state poem. Do you want to read that, and then maybe we'll talk about that a little bit?
Okay, like I said, I'm not too sure about this one because it's very raw and new. You call it a Hiben? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, well, that's how I say it. Yeah.
Hiben. Okay, so as people probably know, Hiben is a prose poem followed by a haiku. Okay, yeah, this is kind of an altered state poem, I think. There are those you forgive. Do you ever have that thing happen when you feel who loves you, who always loved you? My father, dead 12 years, whatever else, loved me. Nothing else shines through time like that. Someone said the near dead see the same scene wherever they are, Papua New Guinea, the villages in Florida. Their gone beloveds in a tunnel of light beckon them. I believe it. Whoever loved me once will love me again. And yes, though my father wouldn't stop mother's whip from slicing me, though fear turned his eyes when she twisted my arm to the floor, made me eat plateless like a dog, I know he loved me. What, I wonder, was it like for him to choose his child raped or his one love lost? Once toward the end, he admitted it. He thought he'd die without her. Now, as the morning moves through windows, my love floods toward him. Light makes him pure as a baby. Poor baby. Sweet baby. Don't cry. Morning sun. 1,000 voices in the dust motes.
Yeah, well, love the haiku and great Hiben. Tell us what you how that embodies an altered state. Like, how does the altered state play in that poem?
Well, I mean, just this concept of unconditional love flowing like light,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, that really feels like almost like a vision to me. And also, I think that the fact that the speaker forgives somebody and feels love towards somebody who allowed that abuse to happen is kind of a radical thought. I think it's a redefinition of forgiveness. Like, I think that people feel like forgiveness is an act, but once again, forgiveness is subject C. Forgiveness is a feeling, it's an experience of love towards someone who's hurt you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's really Christ-like, you know, to do that. And I think that forgiveness is very hard for people to understand because it's something, it's definitely a subject C thing, something you have to feel.
Yeah. So I'm really curious and fascinated about the new magazine. I'm in trance. So is your vision for that? Is it poems about altered states? Or are they written in altered states? I guess maybe that's the thing I'm trying to
Well,
understand.
you know, it's very, very open. I
Uh huh.
mean, that poem, The Lyric Moment Lasts, like that. I got some tea on my glasses. That poem, The Lyric Moment Lasts, like that feels like an altered state poem. You can tell that the speaker is in this open place of pure acceptance. You know, I would love, Dorianne Locke sent me one about near-death experiences. She, like I, is obsessed with near-death experiences and watches them on YouTube all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so she wrote one directly about, you know, an altered state. When you're in a near-death experience, that's an altered state. I would love to see one like on an MDMA assisted journey poem
Uh-huh.
about that. You know, I've never seen one. I'd love to see one. Um, or, you know, this one that I wrote, you know, that Haibun, that where you know, that's talking about this force. The ones that we've gotten, one was about a woman's meditation experience. There was another one just about a woman nursing her child. Um, there was one, Ellen Bass wrote one about where she was driving her granddaughter and she got in an accident, almost got in an accident, but didn't. And this sense of reverence and gratitude for life that flooded her after she almost crashed her car with her granddaughter in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it can take lots of forms.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. And you included with what you sent me some wonderful quotes, like the Paul Eluard. There's a world, another world, and it is this one. Brother Yao, who's been a guest on the Rattlecast here, underneath everything, the skin of the world breathes. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking for with this in trance, and it is such an interesting topic, and the way that it fits with this entire process that we're all going through by creating art and creating poetry. And trying to find the best ways into those insights they're just out of reach in a regular state, I guess, is the point.
Yeah, I mean, if people are interested in submitting, it's entrancejournal.net and or you know, you can find my website, send something to me directly. But probably should wait until June or July to do it because we're just hustling trying to, you know, build the website and get all the it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, well, I definitely know
So,
that. Let's see. So it's a few minutes left. Do you want to do an encore poem from Limerence, maybe? There was a request. Kimberly Gibson Tran requested that Zoom poem after the teaser, but feel free to read whatever you want.
um, let's see. Gosh. Um, well, maybe impossible. This is the very last poem in the book, and it was the last time I saw this person. Impossible. Maury Island Marine Park, Vashon. 500 feet beneath us, waves appear as ripples. Their drone inexact yet cadent, methodical, as the shush of a heart, a great liquid pump that bulges and rakes the blue-black beach. Listen, we whisper, listen. The pulse reaches us. and we can't tell if we're flutes or porous stones. But I know, we both know, I'll leave. And then these present hours will become impossible to hold, like coal in darkness, a billion years compressed, but brilliant when brought back to light.
Yeah, beautiful. Again, that wonderful metaphoric image to close on. That's from the poem Impossible from the book Limerence. Dion, thanks for being a guest. It's so fun talking to you. So many of these topics are really, really fascinating to me and always have been. And it's really cool to have you on again. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that was Dion O'Reilly. Once again, you can find Dion's book at our website, which is DionO'Reilly.com. That's how it's spelled, DionOreilly.com. DionO'Reilly.com. Find Limerence, which just came out, of course, in her past two books, Ghost Dogs and Sadness of the Apex Predator. And that's going to wrap up the featured writer for today. Now we're going to move on to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week is this: write a poem about a time you had to do someone else's job and found the result surprising. That's your prompt for this week. And you had 2 weeks to write this poem since we didn't have an episode last week. Of course, if you missed last week and didn't see the interesting interview with Dean Radin, please find that. That was printed in our rattle number 86, and we shared that while me and Katie were out of town at the what's it called? The Round Top Poetry Festival. And so we weren't here. We skipped last week, so check that if you can't. We had 2 weeks to write this poem. Now, how it works is the same way it always does. Share a poem from this prompt only, 1 page max, and the max time on camera should be about 3 minutes. We don't want to, eat into everybody else's time. We want to get through everybody in a reasonable manner, so we don't have to stay up too late. So make sure if it's a longer poem, like just jump right in. If it's a short poem on 1 page, we can talk about it more and chat a little bit, but. Keep that in mind as you go. Now, what you have to do is email your poem first to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines@rattle.com. And then I can show the poem on screen like we have been already. And after you do that, join the Zoom. And I'm about to deploy the link on Facebook and YouTube right there. And just join us, but only if you'd like to share a poem. If you just want to sit back and enjoy all the poetry, you don't have to do anything because we'll keep streaming. Right where you are is the best place because then you get to watch the poems too. But if you have a poem to share, please jump on the Zoom and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for everybody's patience. It's great to see everybody after the week off. Thanks for being here. Now, the prompt once again was write a poem about a time you had to do someone else's job and found the result surprising. And so we're going to share our poems here. Katie couldn't be here. She's traveling today. She'll be back with us next week. And she misses everybody just as much as I do. We had a lot of travel and plans this April, early May. And it's tough to get together for this Rattlecast today, but we'll be coming back with Katie here, our prompt poems editor, our associate editor, and my wife next week. But in the meantime, the prompt once again was to write a poem about a time you had to do someone else's job and found the results surprising. Now, for the month of April, you probably remember from last episode, me and Katie are doing this Hive Crown, where we go back and forth with the haiku. All the words from the haiku end up in the next person's as we go back and forth. the prose section or the verse of the Hive. And so each sort of poem informs the next as we move through. And I tried to make one fit the prompt too, so I don't have to write that many poems in a week. And so we went through and did a whole book of them, 30 days in a row. And my day 22 was the one that applied to this prompt. And so here, this is a poem called Pittsburgh, and it's a true story. So I'll just read it here. Pittsburgh. And Katie's words were, let's see, it had a bath bomb was in them. Well, I can, hang on, maybe I'll tell you. Let me pull this up on a different window, and I'll tell you what Katie's words were really quick, because it's fun. It's a fun way to do this. Let me go back here. Where are we? Day 21. Katie's haiku was this, and this is a great haiku here. It was bath bomb. All that glitters makes a mess. And so I was forced to include bath in a poem and bomb, which is a difficult combination. So here is my Hive Pittsburgh. After bombing at my first and only folk concert, I took what still might be my final bubble bath. I wasn't crestfallen, climbing into the oversized tub, just cold. I had to hoof it all the way up Squirrel Hill from the warehouse district, where I'd played my guitar case clenched in one frozen claw, its useless second-hand amp under the other arm. Fat flakes of snow, the kind that glitters, were a confetti all around me. The bubbles came with a room, a small bottle on a wicker tray next to a sliver of soap. I poured it in as the water rose and disappeared beneath the mess a dare makes. The steam swirled. I never understood why I was happy in that moment, having failed so fully. Meanwhile, outside the fogging window, somewhere far downstream, he must have been 17. 3 rivers, finally meeting the one. That is my Pittsburgh poem. And that was, I'm not really a musician. I shouldn't be a musician, but I filled in for somebody, kind of. I feel I played the role of a musician. And it was a very interesting experience because it ended up being, it was this friend of mine, it was this little warehouse series she was doing, trying to rehabilitate the warehouse district down in Pittsburgh near the water. And it ended up being this snowy day, and all of Pittsburgh ran out of salt, and so nobody could get home after work. And everybody that was stuck downtown saw the light in the room and the warmth and came in to listen to me. So I played bad folk music / poetry for like 500 people, and really off key with really bad acoustics and a terrible microphone and amp, and it was embarrassing, but that led to this. So there we go. Anyway, that was my Hive for this week. Let's see what everybody else has, and we'll go first to Carla Schwartz.
Hi.
Hey, Carla,
Wow.
great to see you.
Great to be here. I'm just going to get my poem in front of me. And it is great to be here. And I have a Hive also. And it is called, and I sent you 2, so it's the second one, second version. And it's called If Necessity is the Mother of Invention, Laziness is Her Sister.
Nice, okay.
You, the bed maker, the inventor, the builder, creating a beam strong enough to support a room, making a circuit to slough off the current produced by the solar panels when it's too high for the inverter. As for me, bed making, not my forte, not my job. I make a bed sloppily, reluctantly, when I have to, when there's no one around to do it better. Before I moved in, my cleaning people changed my sheets for me. I loved them for that. Now making my bed is mostly up to me, except this morning you told me your idea for how you wanted to make up the beds in the van, how you wanted to sew the top sheet into a sock at one end, and then sew the blanket to the top sheet. And I thought disaster. I thought failure, doom. I pictured torn seams. I said, remember how the AMC would tie the bottom sheet to a mattress instead of using fitted? Let's do that with the top sheet. We'll make a loop at the bottom of the bed, and into that, we will slip the blanket. You challenged me. asked me to draw it, and I tried but failed to sketch my design. So you challenged me further, said, let's go to the van and you can demonstrate. It turns out our new comforters came with little loops at the bottom, so that from our buffer of shoelaces dormant in the basement, I grabbed 2 long ones and tied one to the middle loop of a blanket and did the same with the other. And while you knotted the top sheet under the mattress, I secured the blanket corners through the tied sheet with the lace. An elegant design. You were pleased. This time I was the inventor. We laughed together and then slept well. Bolin, tying the knot.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Carla. Love that love poem and love the haiku at the end. A wonderful monoku. Thanks for sharing that. And your Hyben have really been taking off lately. It's really great to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was Carla Schwartz with If Necessity is the Mother of Invention, Laziness is Her Sister. I love that title, too. Let's go next to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared, how you doing?
Doing okay. So I've got tortoise songs.
All right, let me...
When I was in college, I did my senior thesis on the behavior of Galapagos tortoises. The zoo had a venerable one, and they let me observe him for a semester. He recited many poems to me. Since he was a speaker of an endangered language, I considered it to be urgently important to preserve these poems and to have them translated into English. I had studied neither poetry nor linguistics, so such an important task should not have been entrusted to me, but no one else was doing it. So I translated his poems as best I could. I've reproduced a few below, and the reader will have to take my word for it that they only dimly reflect the power and elegance of the originals. The lettuce is tasteless. I try to consume it without knowing why. It's a boon to grow old, but the sun here is cold, and it traces the wrong arc of sky. One poem references Scalesia, a plant related to dandelions that in the absence of true trees has evolved to grow as tall as 20 meters and forests the windward coasts of some of the Galapagos Islands. After numberless years overseas, I still miss the salt on the breeze, equatorial sun, and a special someone in the shade of the dandelion trees. Many of the poems focus on lost love. For example, no matter how ringing and strong my voice is, she can't hear my song. What's gone doesn't go, and the days are so slow, and life is unbearably long. By now you've noticed the melancholy that characterizes these poems. I don't know whether that's typical of tortoise songs within the Galapagos or only of the poetic tradition that's grown out of the diaspora. I applied for funding to take a research trip to the Galapagos and to continue the work in graduate school, but I didn't receive any grants. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any work that's currently being done to preserve this unique oral poetic tradition. I'll leave you with one final poem. Once the memory of love lost its smell, I retreated back into my shell, determined to find my own oceans of mind and to live in their crash and their swell.
Well, that is just wonderful, Jared. I love the what you've done with it, and also, I guess it's what would you call it? It's like a Hyben, but with limericks. So it's a limmerbun.
Yeah, limmerbun. I like that, limmerbun.
Yeah, well, fascinating. And did you happen to watch the Poetry Space on Limerick recently? Is that
yes, obviously
the inspiration?
The appropriate answer is no. I wasn't intending to write limericks. That's just how tortoises talk. The rhythm of their speech is anapestic, and the proportions of their thought are in 3 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet.
Well, that's perfect. Well, thanks so much for all your research into this important topic, Jared. Really, the world is much embiggened with knowledge. Thank you.
There we go. All right, thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, that was so much fun. Thanks. Yeah, Jared Campbell with Tortoise Songs. Yeah, always so creative. All right, let's go to Kimberly Gibson-Tran next.
Hello there.
Hey, Kimberly, great to see you.
Yeah, okay. So I'll get to mine pretty quick. I was very surprised where this went. It's a sort of braided, and I guess it's also a Mother's Day poem for me.
Hmm.
So this is called Mother. The best definition of mother I've heard is the one where the name isn't earned from squeezing out a squat body. Actually, it's when you catch ungloved some nastiness oozing from the little one. I'm not a mother, but I offer the name to those on the other end, receivers of my horrors, my ingratitude spewed from an unclean tongue. You'd know if you were one. I hesitate to babysit my stepson, but I try it. Taste the helplessness of faking someone else's job. Mother is another way of saying saint. To say Saint Mother Teresa feels embarrassing, redundant, doesn't it? I wouldn't say I have abundant faith. I feel a little like I'm in a play, clapping frantically for Tinker Bell. After his nap, my stepson asked to color a gory scene in crayon, the one of Mary holding dead Jesus, the Pietà. I catch myself explaining. In Mother Teresa's journal, cascades of doubts, terrible depressions. She never saw any intercessions from God in the slums of Calcutta. Still, she pushed on with her thankless mission. Years ago in Europe, I trekked through the town of her birth, Skopje. In her parents' house, I stared at the beat-up Bible. These days, I don't wonder at the retreat of everything holy, but I help my stepson shake the dust from his butt when we head inside, take off his shoes. Mother Teresa let the kids choose from donated shoes, then kicked into pairs that would bruise her. Mother, short of fucker, is a word I thought was hurled in sacrifice, a fetal curl. So it came as a surprise, this gift. I even start to like the word, the sound of it.
Oh, what a sweet poem and what a great journey. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, Kimberly. That was great.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That was Kimberly Gibson Tran with Mother. Yeah, wonderful poem. Let's go to Christiana Doucette next.
Hello.
Hey, Christiana, how you doing?
Doing all right. I really missed live prompt line last week.
I know, me too. And you know,
Looking forward to
the heck of it is we got back in time. We actually could have done it, but we didn't know for sure. And then it was like,
Yeah.
but I would
Better to
have.
plan
Next
for
year,
that.
if we go again to that festival, we know we can scoot out and get back in time, but we didn't know. So,
Yeah. I have a sonnet here this time, and it's a little bit heavier one, I feel like. Um, I'm the oldest of five, and so as an oldest daughter, this is kind of like a sonnet for oldest daughters, I think.
hmm
So it's sonnet of uprooting. They did not give them to me to be cruel. Jobs fall to eldest daughters like loose seed. First watching siblings, enforcing their rules. Duties sprout, spreading thirsty roots like weeds. The cleaning fell to me while they were out. I helped make dinner and I helped clean up. I got us out the door on time, the route smoothed by my planning. I dipped my cup into their overwhelm. There's none for me. When I am overwhelmed, I'm pushed away. I tend to their emotions. They are trees that overshadow where my goals sway. And even now I'm grown, those roots still clutch. They say I'm not enough, that I'm too much.
yeah, beautiful sonnet. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Christiana. Always so many beautiful musical sounds, so much connection, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes, Christiana Doucette with a sonnet of uprooting. Yeah, great poems tonight, all around. Let's go to Amanda Harris next.
Hi.
Hey, Amanda.
So hello. I hope you guys had fun without us.
We wish we were. Wish you were here. Yeah, it's true.
Oh,
we
thank
we
you.
would have chosen to come back and done it anyway. But yeah,
All right.
we're glad to be back.
Good. All right. Lumbar. Guitars belong to their own strange habits. Expecting mimesis, I roll my fingers across the spine of the sound hole. Nothing echoes, but there is the strange island of doubt that stalks my nail like uneasiness or disgust. Somewhere is a ligament that carries with it the idea that sound rescues. For now, foreign detachment.
Oh, that's rough. Thanks so much for sharing that. I hope you feel better with that soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful as always. Love how quick out of the box. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda. Yeah, Amanda Harris with Lumbar. Yeah. All right, and next go to Dick Westheimer next.
Oh, you always catch me when I'm trying to write notes on people's YouTube on the YouTube.
Well, it's great to see you. Thanks for doing that too, Dick. It's always fun because after this, I go back and see what people are saying over there because I can't look at the same time. So I'm glad you do keep that going both places.
Yeah, well, it's a great community on both.
Yeah, it just definitely is. I love it every Sunday, and it really, when you skip a week, it highlights how much I love doing this and how much I miss it when we don't. So. It's the goal is to not skip them and keep that up.
Well, that is a gift for us to know, like, you're saturated with so much poetry, and to know that all you want is more poetry.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is really all I want is like sitting around writing poems together. I think it's like that experience, when I was younger as like an undergraduate and majoring in science, but you'd sit around and you'd talk about everybody's poems and read great poems and think about life. And it was just so fun. And then everything since then is trying to recapture that. But then the Rattlecast just does that every week. So I don't need to, I could just give up the rest of the magazine and just do this. But I won't do that ever either. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
but still,
no, please don't.
it is my favorite part.
And incidentally, I don't know if folks, if there wasn't much discussion of it, but Dion's podcast, the Hive Poetry Collective, she especially, I have my favorites in that group, but she is a terrific interviewer and really gives the poets a lot of room to move. I really love listening to that.
Yeah, we should have brought that up just to mention because we talked about it a lot in the last time she was on. That was one of the focuses. And it's a great podcast too. And I think if you type the Hive Poetry Collective, you find it in whatever podcast you listen to.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are fewer folks on the lines tonight because this is a hard prompt. At least there's so many of them are hard, but I came up with something. We'll see. It presses a metaphor a little bit too hard, sort of bangs on it with a hammer a little bit more than I feel comfortable with. It's called Plant Biology. When Deb leaves town, I care for the houseplants she's tended here for so long, mostly unnoted by me till she's gone. When one fails to flourish, she tells me it's because the soil is too dry, but that it is not because the soil is too dry, but that it is kept too wet, which is why I no longer hook up a hose to the utility sink in the name of efficiency and drag it from room to room, flooding the pots till they overflow. I am reminded that Deb, too, is a plant who prospers with the right balance of attention and open space, like an aloe needing repotting in order not to become crowded and bound too tight. The philodendron and ficus and silver inch, and she, too, will wilt and pale when their roots require fresh air and new soil to revive. Which is why I am more careful now to touch the dirt as she does before watering. With her fingertips, she perceives what we all need here. Water, just enough attention, a bit of food, and room to move for her and for me, a home filled with her plants, and her, till she's gone, till she's off and growing new leaves while the plants and I thrive, being left undisturbed and alone until it's time again for each of us to twine in the other's tangling vines.
Oh, yeah, very nice. I love the concept of that poem. And too, Dick, the lesson in it for me, which I could definitely use too. I'm bad. You can see the plant behind me is the only one those money trees I can keep alive because they're pretty easy. But I think like the overwatering, the underwatering, I don't know. So what is she touching for when she touches the dirt? What do you kind of want to feel?
Well, who knows? What is it that we touch when we're touching? I think it's the moisture. She wants to feel the moisture in it, and she knows the different ones. And our house is just, when she left town for the first time for an extended period, I looked around the house. There's so many plants, and I hadn't noticed them before. But there they are. And I've learned not to kill them.
Well, that's all I ever try to do, but I appreciate that. And, I always love your poems, especially your love poems to Deb. Those are always my favorite. Thanks for sharing that, Dick. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
That was Dick Westheimer with Plant Biology. Next, let's go to Hamid Malik.
Hi.
Hey, Hamid, great to see you.
You too. Thanks, Tim. I have to apologize that mine are always so heavy, but the
that's all right.
they're
wonderful. They are.
All right, thank you. Just to write through stuff. Okay. Why one planet universes smell like pee. We used to go to church and stand in the women's room to the right of the altar before communion. The crying woman was always there, sobbing on someone's shoulder. Why, I wondered, did she need another person to shudder her faucet over? Did she do that only at church, or also in the street, at the shops, pulling in strangers to dribble on? Lobsters pee from their faces, their bladders right under their brains. I'm here, they spray. What a boss move, spitting piss. Monkeys shake the branches of trees to mark their territory. Mine, they screech, to warn off other apes. At 12, I hadn't found a voice in my head or my body to refuse the crying woman as she pulled my shoulder to take us her toilet. There were tisks and whispers of haram, but no one saved me from her. The coiled incense in the room smelt of pee as she howled my pain and shook me closed. Later, whenever I wandered into a universe of one, I remembered what I'd found that day. The strong room I'd chanced upon somewhere behind my lungs, dry and steady, whatever shook my body outside. The men under whom I was drilled into the pages of magazines. The midwife jolting me back to feel motherhood unshell me. The words he cycloned in my face as he left. The churning outside. Stillness inside. But always that acrid smell of myrrh.
Oh, another powerful poem, as they just so often are. Thanks so much for sharing that, Hamid, and the facts too about the lobsters. I didn't know. That's fascinating as well, and a great metaphor. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's Hamid Malik with "Why One Planet Universes Smell Like Pee." Interesting title too. Let's go next to Mike Bales.
Unmuted.
There you go. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, it is nice to see everyone again. I'm going back to my big influence for the job that is the big influence to my writing, being a flagger.
Yeah, definitely. I love the flagger poems. Needs to be a book, Mike's flagger poems.
Could be. It's influenced. One of my books is like a poetic journey where I have poems about different places where I worked and places I called home. And it's a big influence on the poems I put in some of my books. I like being in charge, except I didn't get the raise to be a crew leader. But and there are always surprises when I was kind of in charge. So this poem's called Fitting In. I answered the call to supervise a flagger crew for road construction. The crew leaders are on other assignments. 2 men and 2 young women lying up in front of me, and as I gave the toolbox talk, I bore the weight of their lives. The early sun shone over my shoulders. The tall grasses waved as we started the day. My plan, to place the most experienced, including myself, at the ends of the work zone and the others at appropriate intersections. The others at the end and I took turns driving the pilot vehicle, and as I drove, I heard complaints screamed out by one woman at a side road as I led a long line of traffic toward a sharp turn. I was dismayed and felt betrayed that she had fled from her post, and someone had to leave their post to take her place. We kept traffic moving through the day, her breakdown unexplained.
Yeah, really great story. Thanks so much for sharing that, Mike. And I do love these poems. There's so much, honesty to them and direct experience. It's really fun to read all these. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks. Good thing I was a flagger.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. Take care. Yeah, it's Mike Bales with a filling in. Next up, let's go to Tina Denetclaw.
I was writing a note to Mike, so.
Well, great.
All right.
Love all the notes too. Thanks, Tina.
Okay, so mine's kind of long, but so when I was in pharmacy school, I was deeply involved in AIDS education, so I tried to go to all the conferences. ACT UP on the international level was very supportive of AIDS research, but San Francisco had our own special split of a faction that didn't believe in HIV, and they were disruptive. So that explains that. And then just really quick, my chapbook. I have a chapbook of almost all poems from prom poems that I just like a few minutes ago found out Finishing Line Press. It's picking up.
Oh, that's wonderful! Congratulations,
Yeah,
Tina. That's great
thank
to
you.
hear. Yeah,
it's my very first, and my husband's not listening, so he'll hear about it. But yeah, so it wouldn't be happening at all without you guys, and I'm so much more thrilled than I sound. But
yeah, well, congratulations, yeah, and keep us updated along the way as it comes out for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. So this is DEI Flipside, and it's a revenge poem. So I apologize to anybody who recognizes it. I'm just making myself feel better. I was a student with no money to attend the AIDS conference. I worked the meeting to earn a ticket. I was assigned in-person media registration, off-site in a large room filled with corded rows of no one, but volunteers. High-rise, high-status professionals, sitting and chatting, relaxing together. One side-eyed glance at me told them all I wasn't one of them. Herd effect, in effect, all media calling instead of lining up. The call center on site needed help. Our lead offered for me to leave, and all agreed. My new lead sat me at the central phone desk and showed me the ropes for dishing out calls. A guy named Bruno made chaos of that task. Now free for a different position, our lead gave Bruno a pile of registration sheets destined for central command. Bruno walked out the building with all those sheets, then disappeared. Where is he? Nowhere. When the answer came, he's a member of ACT UP. My lead's voice rose 3 pitches, and at his temple, he was tied to his phone, caught up in crisis mitigation. I ran the call center. French, German, Tagalog. I confirmed the language of each voice and delegated their call. All but the Children's News Network. I registered them myself and explained the next steps. If you have any trouble, call me back and I will help you. We were so busy. My former group came to help. Their lead waved his arms around in the air, insisting on something to my new boss. Then my boss walked next to me, leaned over my desk, and patted my workspace. You stay right here. Next caller spoke Spanish. I got up from my desk and stood next to a woman from my former group who had refused to orient me. She slouched down, recoiling from me, and barely looked over her shoulder to see me. Do you speak Spanish? Yes. Take line 3, please.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Tina. What a fascinating, interesting, and trying time to be living through and sharing that story. Thanks so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. It's a bit of history there.
Yeah, definitely. I always love learning, definitely, and learning through poems is my favorite way. So thanks for helping with that.
Thank you.
Yep, take care.
You too.
Yeah, it's Tina Denetclaw with DEI Flipside. Next, let's go to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hey, Laura, great to see you.
It's nice to see everybody. That was really exciting. Such a vibrant poet, able to articulate these ideas about writing in a really intriguing way.
Oh, great. Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, I'm glad.
Okay, here's my effort. Splinter. It wasn't my task to remove that sliver of pine from Father's toe, but Mother was away. He handed me a magnifying glass and perched his slender foot on a rosewood lacquered chest. Then he lit a match and taught me to center a needle in the flame until it blackened, made clean. At first, I picked sideways at his skin. I could see the splinter float under like a minnow I couldn't catch. I breathed in far as I could and dug. He winced, a tear forming in his right blue eye. This father of mine, who lost his parents in the war, tearing up over a splinter. I felt sorry to rummage so long. At last, the needle encased in a blood drop popped the splinter out to land in silence on a tissue. Father's hands were still gripping each other. We'll meet to recovery, he joked, and I understood.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that memory. Thanks so much for sharing that,
Thank
Laura.
you.
That was great.
Okay,
Yeah.
going to thank you.
Yeah, great use of filling in. Yeah, Splinter by Laura Berg. All right. Next, let's go to Chelsea McClellan.
Hello.
Hey, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. I only had time to write one poem this weekend, and one of the writing groups I'm in is working on Spenserian stanzas, so I attempted to blend that with this prompt.
Oh, interesting. And what is a Spenserian stanza? I can't remember. It's been a while.
It's A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C, C.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And it's kind of exploring the way that skills and whatnot can be lost in generation gaps or skip a generation.
Yeah.
So
let's hear it.
So it's called, okay, it's called Like Grandmother, Like Granddaughter. Postpartum bodies do what they will do. No sweet talk rushes them to crochet faster. I used to want to learn to knit. Still do. Always too slow, I ran out of time to ask her, and though she's still alive, if you ask her past her, she doesn't call me back with any help. I guess she's still annoyed that I harassed her with all those garden questions I withheld until she died. I'll learn to knit myself. Diastasis recti is what they call the gap between our abs we feel post-birth. Lace curtains where there should have been a wall. It's funny just how often it occurs. How many daughters don't take time to learn their mother's recipes until their own daughters ask how grandma knew to turn the crochet hooks just right. Had she been shown, or did she muscle up her grit alone?
Oh, that was wonderful. I love that Spenserian stanza. I mean, with all the enjambment you've got going there and the great choices of rhyme, really musically wonderful and really fun poem. A great poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
Thank you. Yeah. Goodbye.
So Chelsea McClellan with Like Grandmother, Like Granddaughter. Now let's go to Chelsea McGlynn.
Hello.
Hey, Chelsea. Yeah, great to see you.
Yes, you too. I've got a short poem tonight. It's a failed haiku because it felt like it was something small enough that could be a haiku, but I just wanted to put too much in it. So now it's a very short poem that's not a haiku.
That's great. That's fun. Okay, let's hear it.
Sweeping. Pollen bits, drips of juice, wood chips, loose fuzz, biscuit flakes, chalky dust from the bottle of Tums, moss, dropped ladle, splashing sauce, a sticky spot of who knows what, dried chunks of red clay dirt, pinto beans, all the left behind crumbs, my dog's tongue, no longer licks clean.
Oh, that's great. I love that. And that might be how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's close to a what's the form? The demi-sonnet. You know, because it's got the rhyme in. How many lines is that? Is that 7 lines for demi-sonnet? You can rearrange the lines and
should be
call it that.
Half a sonnet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but yeah, really fun, and that's one of those things. I've emptying the vacuum cleaner is something that you, or the dustbin is something.
Yeah, and sadly,
yeah,
it's something I haven't done. I haven't had to sweep much before my dog died because she would eat everything off the floor.
Uh-huh.
So this is the surprise of the job of like how much is on the floor now that she's not eating it all up.
That's really fun. Yeah, because you think about there's so many different things, so many sort of memories in the dustbin. You never really think of it that way, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks for sharing that, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Chelsea McGlynn with Sweeping. Next, let's go to Mary Lisa DeDominicis.
Hi.
Hey, Mary Lisa, great to see you.
Great to see you guys. Missed everybody last week.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let me pull this up because it's a little long. I'll get right into it. I have to say, though, these prompts have been so helpful. Seriously.
Oh, great.
Yeah, this is a story I've been wanting to tell for a really long time, and I did not know how to do it, and finally I did it. So here we go.
Oh, I love hearing that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Annie couldn't ask one of the boys. Be 10 and petite. Pirouette down the street because you're free to play in August's heat all day. Be stopped. Be stopped by Annie, who's older than your grandma's and who speaks only Polish you don't understand, who grabs you by the arm and drags you toward her yard, where her red wheelbarrow rests against decrepit wooden steps. Be Annie and wake it. Be Annie and wail one of the few English words you know over and over to the young girl. Cry, come, come. Throw it hard enough to crack summer's thick silence. Throw it at the girl because you can't ask the boys, those loud, rude thieves who climb your shed at night to steal grapes from your vines and apples and peaches from your trees. Be poor. Be poor old Annie, unable to chop coal for your stove or to heat your home. Be Annie, who owns a cock and hen for eggs the boys also steal. Be Annie and bring the girl inside where your hallway table is lined with pictures of dead relatives lost in the Holocaust. And speak, no, sob, another of the few words you know over and over. Gone, gone. And now be the girl stunned. Be the girl who obeys Annie when she pulls you by the arm back to the yard to get the wheelbarrow, then to the end of the lane, where a field of coal boulders are scattered like alien spaceships among the tadpole-filled ponds and meadows where butterflies and dragonflies hover. Be the girl and take the axe when Annie hands you the axe. And although you've never swung one before, swing the axe so it breaks off pieces of the boulder you can chop into smaller pieces that will fit in Annie's stove. Then load them into the barrow and follow her home. Follow her home and accept the brown-bagged fruit she offers for a job well done. Go home, and after coal splinters thinner than glass make your hands scream for days, learn to steal your father's work gloves and axe when Annie cries again, come, come. Learn to rush home before your father discovers his missing tool. Learn to lie and say you don't know why Annie's become your friend. This, and you won't know it yet, will become one of your proudest memories. This entry into the world of adults, where lies for the better good are common fodder for exchange, is too large a philosophical concept for your brain yet to fathom. You are only 10. Annie must be 80. You don't know it yet, but here is the first time you'll want to save someone other than yourself. Here is where you'll cross the threshold, take your first step into womanhood, love the land, the neighbor, the stranger, be the fruit that allows others to feed.
Oh, it's a wonderful story. Great memory. Thanks so much for sharing that, Mary Lisa,
Thank
and all
you.
the details, bringing it through and letting us be there with you in that memory. Thanks for sharing. I loved it.
Thank you so much for letting me share, and a great interview tonight. I agreed with so much that you guys were talking about. So yeah,
well, that's great. Yeah, glad to hear that. Yeah, well, thanks so much for always being here. It's always such a pleasure, Mary Lisa.
Good night.
Yeah, good night. It's Mary Lisa DeDominicis with Annie Couldn't Ask for One of the Boys. Yeah, that's a great poem. All right, let's see. That's going to wrap up for the Zoom. Let's see if we got some Yeah, so Nivedita asks, she's stuck in a meeting and wants us to read this poem for her. I'm happy to. It's for the prompt this week. Here's Nivedita Karthik's poem. Here we go. In Another's Shoes. I took the mop she usually held in her hands, thinking, how hard could this be? A few swipes, a little soap, but the floor spoke back. Spills I had never seen. Corners that swallowed the dirt whole. She watched, silent, arms crossed, as I slipped, cursed, started again. Not just cleaning. I was listening to the stubbornness of surfaces, knowing when to scrub, when to soothe. By noon, I understood why she hummed as she worked. Oh, that's great. Very similar to Mary Lisa's story. Really wonderful poem there, too. Great memory. Another Shoes by Nivedita Karthik. Let's see. I'm trying to see. Brian O'Sullivan. Do I have the poem here? I'm not seeing Brian's poem. He dropped us an email, though. Wish Brian could be here, but he can't tonight. I'm not seeing the poem. Okay, sorry, Brian. Let's see. Ted Guevara's got a poem here. And as always, he's got a photo, and it's some photographs of lizards, as you can see. Ted sharing with us today. Many lizards, kind of a Andy Warhol's portrait window kind of motif going on maybe with these lizards. I'm not sure what kind they are, but maybe we'll find out. Let's see what poem he's got for us. Mini Godzilla poets. They're in a box they've grown in and rarely peep out of. No one sees them because they're shy of their looks, and they hate the word insinuation or outlandish or extend. Something mechanical about that one. They rather have the looks of an iguana, the ugliest of its kind, but still cute. Appealing enough to a 12-year-old boy who is so enticed by them he imagines being a renowned neurobiologist who discovers there is an esoteric idea in every shift of their bulging eyes. If an iguana can manage a fast, tiny computer, the boy claims, it would have a collection of poetry each night. They don't know such quickness. You don't know how profound a thought is under those scales, metaphors oozing out of them, smelling of roses. You would think coriander or spearmint, which the box once held. Sticks of gum, monster poets chew on them in their downtime when they're not spitting off poems of humility, high standard, and pushcart worthy. That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. There's mini Godzilla poets. And then here's the photo again of those mini Godzillas. Thanks for sharing that, Ted. And next, let's see. What else we got in the inbox? I think that's going to wrap it up for this. Jeff Stumpo sent one in too. We'll read Jeff's. I saw him earlier too. But it was I who said it. This is Jeff Stumpo's poem for this week. But it was I who said it. Mouse, back broken by the half-sprung trap. My foot hesitant. Obdurate death, ferrying away the word mercy before the word killing. Oh, really interesting poem there. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. That was Jeff Stumpo's. But it was I who said it. All right. And that, let's see. Yeah, that's going to wrap up the Rattlecast for today. Let's go to our... It's going to take me a second because I went off it. Let's go to our coup for the weekend. And I was wondering, I'm not sure what to do. I'm definitely like over the Saiku period because they kind of got old. And I've been doing one just regular haiku. But I thought maybe I had a hunch that since we were off last week, there might be a short show. And I thought maybe I'd see how it feels to read all the haiku I wrote this week. And so here are a few. Here's the haiku. There's like 7 of them or something. And so my week in haiku is what this is. We came up to the cabin first. Here's the first haiku. Returning to the cabin, lilacs on a breeze. There you go. And we could smell those lilacs in the distance. We thought they were cherry blossoms at first, but no. We went mini golfing. So here's a mini golfing one. Mini golf, another hole-in-one kiss. And then the main thing we did this week was a High School Musical. My daughter was starring in a Little Shop of Horrors, and so we saw it twice, and wrote a bunch of High School Musical haiku in my head here. So, High School Musical, the choreographer's crutches. High School Musical, all the seniors have their seniors. High School Musical, all the stars that fit on the apron. High School Musical from the orchestra, Pity. High School Musical, Holding His Last Note So Long. My High School Musical run. And then went to church with my son this morning. He's going to church now. In the pastor's hands, the wings of a bird nest. And the last one, over the notes in our hymnal, the tenor's pride. So there you go. So it's a little week worth of haiku there. We'll see if we keep wanting to do that or just picking one or just drop the haiku at the end. I don't know what to do about that, but it's fun to write haiku, and it makes you notice things in life a little bit more. You pay more attention, which is the whole point of poetry and all this stuff that we do. So thanks everybody for being here. It's always been fun to get back after the week off. It's always a little bit, there's so many buttons to push and a little rust to knock off just after a week. It's great to be here and see you all. So next week, Katie can't be here, of course, but she's here in spirit, listening, and also has a prompt for us. And Katie's prompt this week is this: write a poem about unrequited love for something other than a human. So you might have been able to guess this one, but it's a fascinating topic to talk about. So that's write a poem about unrequited love for something other than a human. So we'll see what everybody comes up with there. Kind of open-ended, lots of possibilities, lots of metaphors you can maybe think of. That's going to be next week's prompt. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Li-Young Lee. So Li-Young Lee is in issue number 21 and 25 of Rattle back in the day. He's got a new book out, I Asked My Mother to Sing, which is also the title of one of his most famous poems. And that's also the title of a new anthology that's just coming out, an anthology of mother poems by Li-Young Lee. And of course, next week is Mother's Day in the U.S. And so we thought it'd be a great time to have him on to talk about those mother's poems in the new book. And so that's going to be Li-Young Lee, the guest next week, one of my favorite poets. Should be a fun one. That's Sunday, May 11th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.